please put your hands together and give Sundas a very warm welcome.
My name is Sundas, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Glasgow at the Department of Computing Science. And today, we're going to be talking about robots and how to make them smart and safe. But before we begin, I'd like you to take part in a small activity. Do you see two pieces of blocks in front of you? So there are also two pieces of blocks in front of the person sitting next to you. So I want you to take one of your blocks and place it on top of the block in front of the person sitting next to you. You have 10 seconds, go. Oh, I see. Some of you were playing with them. I want the rest of you to consciously reflect on what you just did. So your eyes saw the object in front of you, and as a result, your joints moved your limbs to position your hand where it can grab the object and transport it to the target position. Now, which part of you orchestrated all of these movements? Could you just shout out? Your brain. Yes, that's correct. Your brain. Now we're going to follow a similar principle, and we're going to use this to build a robot. Okay? And since we're just beginning, we'll make a Stone Age robot with some primitive shapes like cylinders and spheres, where the cylinders are going to act as limbs and the spheres will act as a joint. So we'll combine all of these together and we'll mount them to a base and we'll attach a hand on top. And we have a robot here, but a robot also needs to be able to see. So what we'll do is that we'll add a camera to it, which will act as a vision system. But what the camera does is that it just takes in images and videos. And our robot only understands coordinates like XYZ coordinates and some angles like theta's. What do we do? So what we do is that we use some machine learning and we convert those pixels into some XYZ coordinates and some theta's. Now we can send a command to our robot that go to this particular position and it will. That's great, we have a basic model ready. But we don't always want to be sending commands, we want it to be smart. And how do we do that? So researchers have come up with many methods to be able to do that, but the one which we're focused on is something called reinforcement learning. And the basic concept behind reinforcement learning is that the robot observes its environment and takes one step, so he could go backwards, forwards, up or down. And based on that, it gets a reward in return. So the closer it gets to the target, the higher the reward it gets, and the further away it is, the more negative the reward. And all of this information through millions of iterations is stored in something called a policy. So the policy acts as a method which guides the robot to the target position. Now it's great, a robot does learn, but unfortunately what happens is that our robot is so task-oriented that it's like a football player who's rushing to get to the goal and does not care how many people it bumps into. And unfortunately, we cannot deploy such a robot in public spaces with people for the simple reason that it can cause injuries. This is what I've been working on for the past year, how to make my robot safe. So a simple approach which came to mind was that let's start penalizing it for bad behaviors. It was good in the start, the robot did learn to avoid people, but we still couldn't guarantee that it would always be safe in all scenarios. So what do we do here? Did you notice that when you were building those blocks, some of your hands were intersecting, yet they did not collide? Even when on a busy Friday evening we're boarding a subway, we don't go on colliding into people. Rather, we maintain our distances, we wait for our turn, and then we board. So we apply a similar principle to robots with something called shielding. So what the robot does is that it creates shields around people, and through something called reachability analysis, it keeps monitoring its distances. And when its actions are going to intersect with that shield, it's not going to take that action, but rather would explore some safer actions. And all of this, it starts to store in that policy until it learns a behavior which proves that it is no longer going to collide with people. So now we're not just encouraging good behavior, rather we're enforcing it on the robot. And through experimentation, this technique has shown great success, although it takes a little longer for a robot to learn, but we do guarantee that collision avoidance can be done through this method. Now, robots these days are not just limited to factory floors and manufacturing units to increase production, but rather they're being used in diverse applications, such as a hospital nurse who's a robot rushing through busy corridors to get some medical equipment to a surgery site, and a surgical robot which is rushing through your bloodstream to get to the target organ, and as carers for the elderly where the robot carer helps to feed and dress. So here's to us hoping for a great future with robots where they're safe and effective and better our lives. Thank you very much.